They're learning more about the election.
10 seconds.
Welcome to Canada Conversations, part of Delaware Debates 2014, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. This conversation, taped here on the campus of Delaware State University, focuses on the race for U.S. Senate. We are joined by the Green Party candidate, Andrew Groff. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first we'll start with the most basic of questions, which is why are you running for U.S. Senate?
Why am I running? Well, I think there's a very large void in the progressive side of the ticket. I was very disappointed with our Democrat representative, Mr. Coons, and also with Carper 2 years ago. Senator Carper 2 years ago I ran against as well. That was kind of a way of dipping my toe into the waters of politics. I'm not a politician by trade. But Mr. Coons, in my estimation, is missing a lot of very important policies, not taking a stand on things that I feel he should be taking a stand on nationally to benefit Delawareans.
You mentioned the fact that you're not a person who's done a lot of politics.
That's true.
What in your background should voters know about that makes you qualified for the job, maybe the things that they don't know about?
Well, I've spent a lot of time in private industry. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've had offices throughout the world, in Asia, South America, Europe, etc. So I'm pretty well traveled, done business just about everywhere. I'm a native Delawarean, went to the University of Delaware. So I have a good context for what the experience is as a Delaware citizen, and I know what the world looks like, not to mention national economics as well. And we've had some very challenging years since 2008, and even before the stage was set for these troubles we've been living through the last 5 years. And I hadn't seen the kind of reaction that I think is necessary in Washington and in our state. And to at least lend a voice to that and to raise issues that aren't getting attention is many times the job of a third-party candidate.
Well, let's talk a little bit about economic issues to start with. And the unemployment rate in Delaware has been hovering just above 6% for a little while now. If elected, what can you do as a U.S. Senator to help get Delawareans back to work?
The thing that I think is missing in Delaware, and it seems to be a blind spot, I've been very vocal about this, particularly in the last few years. I think our leadership is not looking down the road. They're not looking into the future and saying, where do we need to be? What kind of industries do we need to be looking at? How do we need to develop our economy in Delaware? We've seen things like power plants come up, chicken refinery processing, refining crude oil. These are 19th century technologies. Every major recession has been punctuated or ended by a change in technology or leveraging in new technology. We had the doldrums in the early 90s, and then the tech boom started. And that was leveraged and rolled out to the entire country, and we know what the effects of that have been. We now have a challenge with energy, and now we have challenges with our environment as well. And we have the technologies already developed. We simply need to roll them out. We need to embrace the future and focus on those technologies, not things that are 200 years old.
Since the recession started in 2008, a lot of the talk has been dominated by the budget, the national debt, things like that. How do you address those issues?
Well, these issues in terms of the national debt, the budget, things like this, all center around the paradigm we live in terms of our national government. We spend trillions of dollars on foreign wars, foreign entanglements, things like that, while our infrastructure here is falling apart. If you just look at that as a very simple microcosm of the entire kind of developments that have happened, we're not investing in ourselves.
Right.
It's like we're not going to college. We're just financing everybody else either to blow themselves up or do something else. So we need to kind of take a look in the mirror and say, do we like this hegemony? Do we need to be the Rome of our time, the Pax Americana, and have huge, over 900 military bases spread out throughout the world, 11 aircraft carriers? Do we really need to do that? Or has the world kind of caught up with us a little bit with technology, where sometimes they can handle themselves and we don't have to interfere, and we can get our own house in order? And I think that'll make a huge difference.
We hear a lot voters hear a lot about the partisan divide in Washington, specifically in Congress. What do you feel can be done to resolve that, to bridge that divide and get things done?
Well, I think that partisan divide is somewhat physical, but it's also illusory. I think to have a divided country who's constantly being distracted by fighting the other guy or disagreeing with the other guy is not going to solve any problems or get us where we need to be. I think if we had more diversity in our government, more independents, more third-party people, I think we would have people who would be more willing to work together as Americans. We have common citizens. We have this oligarchy of incumbents down there that seems to be entrenched in their financial processes, in their re-election processes, all these processes that do the average American no good. But I think it does them a lot of good. They get the big money from the large corporations, from the banks, et cetera, and which tends to cement them into their positions. Whereas if you had more of a variety of candidates or a variety of representation down there, there may be a lot less of that. The money in politics right now, I think we all agree, is quite toxic.
Immigration is also something we've heard a lot about recently. It's been a growing problem, and it has been kind of exacerbated recently by the influx of the unaccompanied children fleeing from Central America. What should Congress be doing about that?
Well, I think we need to look at our immigration laws and come up with a plan. We do have quite a few on the book, but I'd like to differentiate that, which is an important issue, from the children's issue, which is a humanitarian issue. First and foremost, they're kids. And anybody's kids, we don't want to see them victimized, we don't want to see them murdered or taken advantage of by the drug cartels or anything like that. These are kids. We have to treat that as a humanitarian issue. The greater issue in terms of immigration itself, we need to look at the causes of why these waves of people are coming in. We've always had a large demand for immigration to the United States. I was an exchange student, I've been abroad when I was young, and there's always been a strong desire among people wanting to get ahead to come to America and to exploit these freedoms and the ability to create businesses and whole new industries out of whole cloth, et cetera. So we need to kind of balance these things that have made America great, which is our immigrant population, whether it was the Italians or the Irish or the Germans or the Asians that have come over in different waves. They have all added to our country. So we need to have a strong policy that's enforceable, and we also need to look why people from Central America and South America are attempting to flood in here. Are the conditions that bad down there? And I've spent some time in Central and South America, and I'm very familiar with the cultures down there in the countries that I've been through and done business with. And I think I understand why they want to come here. And you know, we may be able to help alleviate that if we take a new look at it with different eyes and not just get our hackles up, load up the AR-15s and head for the border and be very militaristic about everything. I think we have this militaristic bent to a lot of our policy decisions these days. But one thing I have found traveling this world is 99% of the people are not in politics. 99% of the people are not in the military. They're just people like you and me, everyday people, want to do their business, raise their families, love their children, and things like that. Most of the world is actually a great place, and they're wonderful people who don't intend anybody any violence or misery. And I think we need to adjust our policies to the 99% and not the 1%.
You referenced earlier U.S. role overseas, and certainly in recent months we've seen fighting in Israel and Gaza, Syria, Iraq, Ukraine. Realizing all these conflicts have their very own individual unique elements to them, is there a general rule of thumb or criteria that you see for the U.S. involving itself in these situations?
Well, I think if we start thinking of people and as humans, and that we are connected with each other, we may change the way we look at some of these situations. Mr. Obama, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, told Israel to cease the hostilities, and then issued a check for $300 million to rearm them. It's kind of a confusing message. So I'm not sure, what's going on there, but I think Eisenhower warned us of the military-industrial complex. I think there's something to that. In nearly every one of these main conflicts, some of our large military suppliers have done quite well. And we can look at that as a transfer of wealth from the very poor and destitute to very wealthy and rich, almost oligarchy type industries, like Halliburton is an example of that.
And finally, I want to end on education. A lot of talk in recent months about Common Core. Where do you stand on Common Core and the direction of education in this country?
Well, this is near and dear to my heart. I come from a long line of educators, and I myself do teach college. I teach for Del Tech. I'm an adjunct instructor for the computer sciences department. My parents are elementary school teachers in Newcastle County, and we've had a lot of discussions around the dinner table about this. And I think we all agree that it comes down to a partnership between the community and the teachers. I'm not sure there's anything Washington can do to positively impact education, except find a way to make sure that there's funding for those poor areas that don't have the tax dollars, don't have the base to provide good education. It's central to where this country is going. And I think a lot of the testing, some of these core standards, I've reviewed some of the math standards, which are abysmal in the techniques that they're proposing are ridiculous. I think good people are well-intentioned. I think sometimes, though, there are financial interests and there are political interests that can get in the way of that. And I've seen that at the state level in Delaware. We have some fine people in Delaware, Mike Matthews being one of them, and Red Clay, he's a union representative. And he's a wonderful man who's very passionate about education and doing the right thing for the kids and the families. And I think we've got to start listening to young people like that and start getting our heads out of the clouds and thinking that some central bureaucracy is going to have all the answers to everything that comes up. The people that know what's working and what's not are the teachers and are the local families and the local schools themselves. We've had great records of some very successful schools in this state and some very experimental type programs that have done well, but they just seem to fade away with time. They don't seem to be picked up or carried into other areas or tried new things. It's almost like each district is kind of on its own in what it's doing, and to a certain extent that's okay, but to a larger extent there's things that work and need to be communicated. I'm not saying that's not done, it just doesn't seem to go anywhere, some of these new innovative things that are done. So I look to young people like Mr. Matthews to the future, because that type of person's our future, and where good education is going to come from. It's not going to come out of Washington.
All right. Andrew Groff, Green Party candidate for U.S. Senate. We thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
You can find all of our candidate conversations online at DelawarePublicMedia.org and DelawareDebates.org. Candidate conversations are taped here at Delaware State University and are part of Delaware Debates 2014, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware Center for Political Communication. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. Thanks so much for watching.